I'm so excited to talk today about this important topic of fueling the future. How can we support young people, our children, our young colleagues, maybe to implement healthy habits? So today we are going to talk about some topics that we have already been talking about in previous sessions. But if you are here for the first time, maybe you need a little revision. So we will talk about sleep, nutrition, brain development. Today, a new topic of tongue, nails, and skin. How can you track some nutritional deficiencies or disease by looking at tongue, nail, and skin? And then, why is role modeling important? And last but not least, in the end, we will talk about some meal plans and how to eat. For those ones that are here for the first time, have never seen me before, don't know anything about functional medicine, I'm Blanka Campbell, the functional medicine practitioner and holistic nutritionist. And in functional medicine, it's all about the function of organs, but the organs react to the core of the matrix. And in the core of the matrix, we have mental, emotional, and spiritual health. So if you are for a long time under stress, it's going to have impact on the other areas of your health. So for example, assimilation, digestion. We all know that if you are under stress, you are in a fight and flight. There is no time for digestion. If you don't digest well, you are not going to have the building blocks for the structural integrity to build the muscles and skin and the endocrine system. So all the hormones, the chemical messengers are not going to communicate together. Maybe there is also going to be some imbalance in transport, so your cardiovascular disease and lymphatic system is not going to carry these messengers and macronutrients and micronutrients in the bloodstream. And you will not have any time to eliminate the waste products, and they are going to accumulate and accumulate and accumulate in different organs, maybe even in the brain, which leads to neurodegenerative disease. Very often my clients say, I don't have enough energy. And here we come also to the energy in mitochondria and the immune system. So as you can see, nothing works in separation. The human body and the function of the human body works in synchrony, body, mind, and spirit. And as you can see on the bottom of the matrix, we always talk about, but what can we do about it? Because when you go to the doctor, it's most probably too late. And I know we should be saying it's never too late, but sometimes, unfortunately, with the human body, it is too late. And medication might be a temporary plaster to pain, but the healing comes for digging into the root cause and taking daily, repetitive, consistent action. And one of them is sleep and relaxation, exercise and movement, nutrition, stress management, and relationships. What is also important is to look at antecedents. So, what happened in your childhood? Because we are exposed to the environment and that's what we absorb. So, when we look at the next slide, we can see that role modeling for children and young people is the most important. So it's not don't tell them, show them. Don't tell them what they should do, what they should eat, because of course with your knowledge at your age, you know much better than them, but they have to experience the things on their own and they're learning from what we do. So what we eat, how we sleep, how we exercise, how we can regulate our emotions, and how we can have this present moment, the mindfulness when we are with them and when they are with us, and how we, of course, manage stress and relaxation. Remember that what you seed, you reap, and children are programmed until the age of 7. And they're shaped by the environment, so where we live, who they are exposed to, and it's all about mirroring effect. So here is this beautiful picture. There might be a mother or a person that would say, oh, snake, put it down. And this immediately imprints to the child that holding a snake or any animal is dangerous. But if the mother says, oh, this snake is beautiful, it's actually not dangerous, but what about letting him slowly into the nature, into his home? It's completely different message and in shapes, completely different belief. Uh, During our days, 95% of what we do is on autopilot. And it's always based on the previous experience that we had. Our brain remembers it. Maybe even when you drive the car, sometimes you are thinking about the shopping list, suddenly you stop in front of your house and you don't even know how you got there. Your autopilot safely got you home. You looked to the right, to the left, you stop where you were supposed to stop because it is so familiar to you that you do it on a regular basis. And usually only 5% of the time we are using our brain for something that is new. But mindfulness is stopping in the present moment and forgetting all about the past and not reflecting into the future, just feeling what our intuition is telling us. And this is what children and children are good at because they are most of their time in the alpha and theta brainwaves. We are in beta brainwaves. Beta brainwaves is the stress and thinking about all the danger that is around us. Alpha state is when we meditate for 1, 2, 3 hours, or sometimes after one glass of red wine, but that's not what I recommend. So children can be in the state of flow and they are fully engaged. So everything else disappears and even time disappears. Where has the time gone? And they have creativity, intuition, daydreaming. And it's important to support their dreams, even if they seem unreachable for you. For them, every dream can be turned into reality. So what the adults very often do is they are chasing. But the true fulfillment doesn't come from chasing. It comes from moment of immersion in the state of flow. So what about supporting the young people to stay in the state of flow? And maybe you say, but I don't have small kids until the age of 7 anymore, but I have kids in between 7 to 12. Well, you still have some chance to imprint something into them. So this time is about skills and values. And what I would encourage you to maybe review is how much do you love them in your agenda? Because many of my clients that work in the corporate world, they always say, but the most important for me is family and my health. And then when we review their agenda, there is no time blocked for family, children, and for health. So maybe now when you open your agenda, is there some time for your family and for health? And if you have small children, are you interested in what interests them? Or do you try to impose on them what you would have wished to have done, and you want them to do it despite they are resisting? And I can tell you a personal story. I, as a small child, was forced to play piano because my mom was forced to play piano, and then I didn't like it. But what have I done to my 7-year-old daughter? Of course, she was forced to play piano. But she said, no, I don't want to. If you want to play piano, do it. So I started playing piano. So we need to listen to them what they want to do and not force them to do ballet and to play the music and to learn the languages if at this time they don't want to do it. What we want is to cultivate confidence, courage, and curiosity. So this is something, if I could fuel the future, I would put into a school's curriculum how to build a confidence. So confidence does not shout, it is silent. And very often you can see people around you, and I actually used to be one of them because I wasn't confident at all. So I was shouting and showing to everybody how smart I am, how good I am, because I was chasing the appreciation from the external environment. Well, for example, my ex-husband, who is very confident but doesn't show it to anybody, he never chased any appreciation for anybody else and never showed to people his success. So I wish that my children and people around us are exposed to this yogic thinking that there is empathy for the others, and the energy that you send outside is going to come back multiplied. About courage. We all know that it's not easy to make any change. When you want to lose weight, there is hunger, there is discipline, and not everybody goes through that for 2, 3, 4 months, 1 year, 2 years, depending on how much they want to lose, and then keeping it for 2 years, because that's the set point. So it takes courage to get out of the comfort zone. And there are only two times when we do that. So first is when we want to get from the uncomfortable to the comfort zone. So if I talk about weight loss, so somebody gained weight, maybe after giving birth, there is like 10 kilo of extra weight that the woman wasn't carrying before. She feels uncomfortable in this body, and then she takes the courage to do whatever it takes to get back to where she was. Or on the other hand, it's when we are, so it's either chasing the pleasure or getting away from uncomfortable feelings. So when we are chasing the pleasure, it's also easy to take the courage. And of course, what helps is having somebody who is there for you when you are falling down, when you want to give up. They just pull you up and walk the path with you. So here I really recommend masterminds or groups where are the like-minded people, and the same for children. Because if they are in some sport club, if they want to do sport, being in the group and even the coach that can have impact on them is wonderful. And then curiosity, letting them explore and encourage them to take risks. So for example, last night my son took a train from Prague to Basel, and I don't like my children, like he's 17, of course he could go by train, but I don't like them to go through all Germany in the night train because I'm this mother that protects them. But he took the courage, and I took the courage to let him go. And he was seeking this unpredictable situation. So sometimes we have to let them go and try to do something, even though we know that it's, for example, not the best option, and there would be other options. Very often, and again, it can be with my son because he's 17, nearly 18. Now he's going to go to the university. And everybody thinks, oh, but he's almost 18. He must know what he's doing. But not for everybody the brain is developed. So brain chemistry and development is happening until the age of 25 or like mid 20s. That is the full maturation of the cerebral cortex. And what is cerebral cortex responsible for? It governs the impulse of control. And you know that sometimes teenagers, they cannot control their emotions. They might slam the door, they might say something that they didn't want to say. And we shouldn't try to educate them in that moment. We maybe later on can sit down and tell them about some boundaries and behavior, but not in that moment. They cannot regulate the emotions. They don't know yet about the balance. So it really takes this neuroplasticity, years and years of neurons wiring together, connecting together. Also, their executive function is not developed properly. So we cannot put too much expectation on them. So how can we approach it? We can approach it with empathy rather than judgment, and definitely not telling them how we would do it at our age. Because if maybe you remember when you were 17, what did you do? I certainly made many mistakes, or let's call it life lessons. So why is sleep important? And again, what I see very often that my clients do to their children, they don't let them take the naps. children at this age, teenagers, need to nap. When they come from school and they lie on a sofa and they fall asleep for 1 hour, this is the nap that they needed. So let them sleep. And actually, for example, my children, sometimes at the weekend, they fall asleep at 11 and they sleep until lunchtime, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Usually at 3 o'clock, I wake them up, especially my daughter, but it works. So power napping, actually, even in some corporate companies, like Roche in Basel, they have rooms where you can do power napping. You can lie down and for 20 minutes you can sleep on a sofa that is very well supported. And so why for children it is sometimes difficult to fall asleep at 10 o'clock when we tell them go to sleep at 10 o'clock, go to sleep earlier, because they have this delayed melatonin release, and melatonin is a sleeping hormone, and without that you just cannot fall asleep. What I try to encourage my children, and maybe let's pass this information to other young people, is don't use the blue light. Switch off your mobile phone. And maybe your teenagers are saying, but I use the wake up alarm on my mobile phone. And even if I offer them the traditional wake up alarm, they still want to have the mobile phone in the room. But if your children are between 7 and 12, you still have lots of power to take the mobile phone away from them and restrict it as much as possible. And the same goes for non-wireless, like there's no wireless earphones. I know that my daughter, and she's now 15, she will turn 16, she had this habit that she was falling asleep with music with the wireless earphones, and I really had to stop her doing that, because that is disrupting the neurotransmitters and of course has negative impact of sleep. So when we talk about how much sleep we need, so adults need 7 to 9 hours, from which 1.5 hours should be the deep sleep. This usually happens in between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the night. And then there's usually light sleep, REM, or some people like in perimenopause, menopause, they're waking up in the night or when they are very stressed. So the time when you go to bed is the most important, because that's when you get into the deep sleep. And with children, they need 12 until 16, maybe even more hours to recover. Remember that at school they are learning a lot, and it's only in the deep sleep when we consolidate from the short-term memory to the long-term memory. So let them sleep. What else I do with my teenagers, and what I recommend everybody to know, and this is what I would teach at schools, fueling the future, is to looking every morning at your tongue, because the tongue tells the story. So first of all, when you sleep, all the bacteria, all the pathogens are collecting in the gums and on the tongue. So first thing when you get up is you want to put a little bit of water into your mouth. You want to rinse it and you want to spit it out. And then you want to use a tongue scraper and scrape it. So getting rid of all the bacteria. Then ideally you would want to drink a 1 glass of lukewarm water, maybe with a squeeze of lemon or a pinch of pink Himalayan salt for electrolytes. And if you look at your tongue, maybe you can see some scalloped edges or maybe imprints of your tooth. So in the morning, it might be normal, especially if it's, for example, summer and it's very hot and you did not drink for a long time, because that means dehydration, but it can also mean poor absorption if it's during the day. So just pay attention on the sides of your tongue. The other thing, and that's what I see, of course, with my clients very often, when they come to me that they have some digestive drama, bloating, farting, diarrhea, constipation, and I tell them, show me your tongue. I can see this white coating. And this is usually the yeast like Candida, but it can be any other yeast. And you would notice you have like sluggish digestion, you hear the noises, you get bloated very easily, your stool is stinking. So in that case, so you can either do the anti-candida protocol that we spoke about in previous sessions, Or you can do the stool test and see, is there any pathogen? Is it just candida, or is there like any yeast? And remember, in functional medicine, we have 5R protocol. So the step number 1 is to remove, replace, repopulate, and the other one. So removing is the number 1. Maybe you would also notice that you have microcytic anemia or macrocytic anemia. So microcytic anemia is when the marker, it's called mean cell volume, is very low. It means that the red blood cells are very, very small. They don't have enough iron, and then you might feel tired. And the biggest mistake that I see with my clients is that they take iron infusion. But if you have pathogenic yeast and bacteria and parasites, they grow on iron. So more iron you give them, more these colonies overgrow and more digestive drama you are going to have. So that's why the step number 1 is to eliminate the pathogens. You do it either with antifungal, antiparasitic, antiviral, antibacterial herbal treatments, or if you decide antibiotics or other treatments. I personally don't, because I do everything with my clients the natural way. But just to tell you, there is also this allopathic way where the doctors give you prescriptions. However, it might not work fully. So always check the tongue for you and for your youngsters at home. What you also see on this picture, and I see it very, very, very often, are these cracks on the tongue, right? So if you take your tongue, uh, you would see if there are like any cracks. What does it mean? It depends where on the tongue it is and how deep it is. So if it's really deep, really cracked, damaged tongue, all the bacteria actually hide inside, and that is not good. The tongue should be nice, smooth, there should be no cracks. The majority of reasons that I see with my clients is that they have low enzymes or their liver is stressed. So we spoke about it in a previous session, but I will like repeat it. You can do this baking soda test, which means that you take a quarter of a teaspoon of baking soda, mix it in 200 milliliters of water, and you drink it as a first thing in the morning. And because it has the same effect as soda, if you were drinking like a carbonated drink, you know that you would be burping, because if you drink a lot of it in one moment, obviously the bubbles are trying to come up. And the same in our stomach. We have hydrochloric acid. It's just very, very acidic, and it is there for a reason, because it needs to kill all the pathogens. However, when you are under stress, or you have, for example, this pathogen H. pylori, or you had some ulcers, or you are taking non-steroidal drugs like ibuprofen on a regular basis, very often you don't have enough hydrochloric acid. And if you drink the baking soda with water, the burps are not going to come. If you are super healthy and you have enough digestive enzymes and hydrochloric acid, the bubbles come very, very quickly. So that's the test number 1. If you discover that you are not burping, you can either go to the gastroenterologist, they can do the gastroscopy, they can take the samples of the acid, they can have a look at what's happening. So that's a step number 1. Then you can also do the stool test, where you will see how is your liver working, because the enzymes, the metabolites are also shown, and it shows the pancreatic elastase, which is produced only by pancreas, which produces the enzymes. But you can also do blood tests for amylase and lipase that will show you also the pancreatic enzymes, and you can do the liver tests that will show you the function. If the liver tests are very low, it means basically the liver is not working in an optimal way. And if it's very high, or you have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, then the liver is also not working in a proper way. For youngsters that are under stress, it might be that the digestion is shut down. Yeah? So if you have a chance, check the tongue of the youngsters and check your tongue. Pale tongue very often is iron deficiency or B vitamin deficiency. With small children, you can very often see glossitis. It's red tongue, and that is B vitamin deficiency. So I always recommend either, of course, eating properly or giving the supplements or running the DNA test. So this was tongue. But let's look at the nails, because nails can tell you the story as well. So many of my clients, actually even young girls, 18-year-old, they have very brittle nails. And when I run the blood tests for them, for the total protein and, for example, albumin, we discover, or uric acid, and we look at urea. These are all the markers of the waste product of the protein, and we usually discover that they don't eat enough protein. Remember, young people, they don't need only 1 gram of protein for every kilo of the body weight, but they need 2 grams of protein for every kilo of the body weight, because they're still growing, they're still developing, so they need more protein. And very often they might have also iron deficiency, especially young girls, because the first years of the menstrual cycle, it is not regulated yet, and very often they have heavy period. So as they lose quite a lot of blood, even 80 milligrams or 200 milligrams, some women even half a liter of blood. Imagine how much iron they lose. And zinc, because zinc is needed for the immune system, but zinc is also needed for the development of sex organs. So very often when you see also white dots on the nails, and if it's only on one nail, maybe you had some trauma, you hit yourself. Okay, that can happen, and then it takes like 6 months to grow, because for our fingers, the nails are growing for 6 months, and the toes 12 months. That's how long it takes to completely replace them. So if it's just like one dot and you remember that you hit yourself, it's fine. But if you look at your nails and you will see that there are multiple white dots, that might be zinc deficiency, but sometimes it might be also selenium deficiency if you have any thyroid issues, if you have, for example, hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism. So then running the urinary test like metabolomics can tell you exactly where you have deficiencies and what you need. So peeling and soft nails, again, it can be low stomach acids, because if you have low stomach acids, you are not absorbing any vitamins and minerals. It just all gets wasted. And even protein cannot be broken down if you don't have stomach acids. So that's why doing the test with the baking soda would be quite important for you. And if you have like slow growth and you can see like some ridges or some lines, again, it can be iron, it can be biotin. Maybe check also your hair, maybe some circulation issues. Maybe you would notice that your feet get swollen or that you get dizzy. I mean, it's very, very complex, and even for children. So, for example, my daughter, as I said, she's 15, but since she got her period at the age of 12, she was fainting, and the fainting was coming usually around the period or after the period. So I have to make sure that she takes extra supplements, and maybe that's what you would do for your young person too. Again, skin. Maybe you have experienced acne. Maybe you are still experiencing acne. Maybe you have a teenager who is having acne. And this is a case of my son. So my son, as I said, is 17, and I just run the tests for him. I write a letter to the doctors. I tell them what I want to do. And one of the tests that is not routinely done is DHT, dihydroxytestosterone. And this one, is usually a culprit of hair loss for men, yeah, so when they're getting bald, but also acne on the face and on the back. And also for women that have polycystic ovarian syndrome, they very often have higher levels of aromatase, which is the enzyme that turns testosterone into DHEA. This test was not covered by insurance, and I paid 64 or 67 Swiss francs for this one test. Everything else, like the DHT and sex hormone binding globulin and free testosterone, all of that is covered by insurance companies, and these tests are not cheap. So, why do we want to help kids and teenagers with acne, because it's also about the self-esteem. They don't like to look at their face in the mirror, and this is the time when they are like dating or presenting themselves somewhere. And you know how it is when somebody has a really bad acne, everyone is looking at them and everyone wants to give them the advice, or everyone is telling them, oh, I used to have that as well. It is not helpful. So for girls and for boys, acne or any skin issues are usually related to hormones. So you can also ask them, or with the teenagers that you have at home, you can notice if they have stinky underarms, usually the right underarm, because that's the liver is clotted with the overactivation of the hormones like estrogen and testosterone. And here you can support the liver enzymes. There is a really good product from Sunday Natural, and it's called Liver Cleanse, but also BioCare has liver support, and they are helping to clean the liver that is processing so much the metabolites. And very often zinc deficiency. With zinc, please remember, if you are supplementing, you want the easiest absorbable form, and you always take zinc like 20 milligrams after lunch, never after breakfast, never on empty stomach, because zinc is increasing the hydrochloric acid. So for teenagers that maybe have enough hydrochloric acid, this causes burning sensation, pain, and even feel like of nausea, vomiting, and fainting. And I have experienced this myself many, many times. Of course, sugar is the culprit because it is feeding this bacteria that is living on the skin. So decreasing the amount of sugar, carbohydrates, bread, pasta, rice, but mostly processed food. And then gut imbalance. So very often they also have some like parasites, so doing some cleanse might be helpful. And you are saying, okay, I don't have any acne, I don't have anybody with acne around me, but for years and years I have been suffering with dry skin, eczema, I have some rashes when I eat food. So we spoke about this in previous session, and it can be the salicylic acid intolerance, it can be histamine intolerance, it can be that you don't have enough omega-3. So omega-3, like a fish oil, but you can take it also from algae. And what you want to look at is always EPA and DHA. So EPA helps, it's anti-inflammatory, and DHA helps with the brain. So you want a ratio of 1.5 to 1 EPA and DHA, and then definitely vitamin D. Vitamin D deficiencies, like in 99% of my clients and all the children and everybody that has ever done a vitamin D test. And even for me, and I have a dark skin, I was always thinking that it's enough to sunbathe and I will have enough vitamin D, but that was before my studies. And then I started running the tests, and I discovered that I was always deficient. And especially in the winter, I was suffering the seasonal depression. So since that time, I take supplements daily of vitamin D, and of course I also expose myself to the sunshine, and I give vitamin D large doses to my kids. Every doctor for children is going to, even for you, is going to prescribe vitamin D. And in the UK, NHS, even without testing, gives vitamin D to everybody. Yeah, so you will get it for free in every single country without testing. And eczema and rashes, very often with my clients, I can see that they have gut permeability. So they have leaky gut. And then basically everything, even if they are under stress and they don't have enough of the hydrochloric acid in the stomach, and then they don't digest the food moves into the large intestine where all the pathogenic bacteria start eating it. And when they have leaky gut, also these pathogens get into the bloodstream, and then it's circulating everywhere. And then they run the blood tests for inflammation, and we can see they have high inflammatory markers. They feel very tired, and it's a vicious circle. So the number one is to heal the gut. With the healing protocol, you want to speak to a professional. Yeah? And food sensitivities. Of course, there can be many food sensitivities, even if the food is healthy, like apple. It is a high FODMAP, fructose. 75% of the population have fructose intolerance. I have fructose intolerance. I try to avoid fruit as much as possible, or I eat low fruit or in very small amount, and I take digestive enzymes like fructose before eating it so that I don't experience any digestive drama. So finding out which food are you sensitive to? Is it sorbitol in avocado? Is it histamine in strawberries? This is either about trial and error if you do it on your own, or you can have about 10 sessions with any nutritionist and they will lead you on how to do the elimination diet. Allergies and hives. So this usually comes from childhood, or it develops during perimenopause. So why during perimenopause? Because women in perimenopause don't have progesterone. Progesterone is the first hormone that disappears, and progesterone is anti-inflammatory and protective. That's like a pregnancy hormone. That's why we have so much of progesterone during pregnancy. And then if you are not ovulating anymore, but still having a menstrual cycle, you have estrogen dominance. So heavy period, painful period, irregular period, acne, mood swings. This is usually connected to high estrogen. And estrogen increases the histamine intolerance. So suddenly you might start reacting to the food that you did not react before. Yeah? So it's all about going to the root cause, finding out where is the imbalance and trying to get it into balance. And then everything else like allergies and hives might also improve. If you had allergies from the childhood, there is this, it's called hygiene hypothesis. So if you have small children, don't be overprotective. Don't use the disinfection sprays. Let them play with animals, lick their fingers in the ground, because in the first years, they are building the resilience to pathogens and also the allergies. If they have been protected by the environment, then later on they might develop the allergies and they might be more sensitive. There are many tests, actually even in Spain, they do brilliant tests for the Th1 and Th2. So these are two pathways of the immune system, and then you can discover which one is weak, and then you have a protocol for that. So there are many, many, many things that you can do for you, for your children, because I know how difficult it is to watch our children suffer or watch our family suffer or friends even. And if they have dry inflamed skin, so very often again it's this low essential fatty acids. One of them is omega-3, but it's also omega-6, GLA from evening primrose oil. So again, running either a test or supplementing all of them. And then vitamin A. So even for the skin, it's vitamin A. And I'm, for example, now quite unsatisfied with my son because he decided to use Accutane isotretinoids, which is large doses of synthetic vitamin A. What it makes the skin extremely dry. There is no sebum. So he's going to have dry eyes, cracking lips. Everything is going to be painful. He will not see, but he wants to go through this for 6 months. It, of course, completely damages the liver enzymes, and the impact on his health is not going to be optimal. But he had so much acne, and now he goes to university, that he wants to give it a try. So what I will do along this isotretinoids for 6 months, maybe he will give up after 1 month, as usually people give up, but I will support him also with other functional medicine protocols to ease the pain. Very often young people, teenagers, and we want to fuel the future. This is a topic of today's session. Nobody wants to experience anorexia and bulimia, but how does it happen? It happens that children are bullied because of their weight, and then they go on drastic diets. So what I want to say that measuring body mass index is not always optimal, because if you, for example, have muscles or you have like heavier bones, the weight is going to be higher, and then when you do the calculation, it will tell you that you are overweight or obese. What you want to do, and actually this is for everybody, not just youngsters, you can measure. Are you apple shape or pear shape? So apple shape is, let's say, dangerous because it's visceral fat. But pear shape means when women usually have like a bigger bum or legs, it's actually a sign of fertility. Yeah? So they have like small waist, and then it comes to this pear shape. Perfectly fine. If you are a pear, super healthy. And if you are an apple, pay attention. So what you would do, you would measure around the belly button, and then also on your hips. And Then you do this calculation of the belly-hip ratio, and it should be, as you can see, 0.80 or lower for women and 0.95 or lower for men. If you go over this, then it's dangerous. Why is it dangerous? Because we said that the belly fat is endocrine organ, actually produces hormones. And very often for men, it turns testosterone into estrogen. That's why they are growing the boobs. And you can sometimes see this in 13, 14-year-old boys at the swimming pool, that they have like boobs, they have developed breast, because they have this belly fat, and the aromatase, the enzyme, turns testosterone into estrogen. So how can we help them to maybe moderate the weight and change the dietary habits without putting any pressure on them? And with girls, it's absolutely normal that after their period they gain weight, even without changing the diet, because the body suddenly needs more supply of the cholesterol, which is a building blocks for the sex hormone estrogen and progesterone. But then within 1 or 2 years, they naturally lose it. So speak to your teenagers, tell them that it's normal, and maybe support them in eating more protein and more vegetable. But if you don't have teenagers and you don't have any young people around you, we are still talking about this belly fat. This is how it looks. This is a liver organ. You can see a gallbladder under it, and usually the fat cells basically grow. So what happens is that there are blood vessels going to every single cell in our body. But when the cell is growing, the supply chain does not grow. So there is not enough oxygen, not enough for the cell. And this cell is going through hypoxia. It doesn't have enough oxygen, and it becomes very dangerous. So this is the reason why we want to lose the weight. It's not about any body shaming. It is just purely dangerous. So if you are doing the blood tests, you want to do the triglycerides, HDL, LDL. You want to test fasting insulin and inflammatory markers like CRP, because if these markers are high, it means you have metabolic syndrome, and you know that, for example, with diabetes, it is irreversible. So what is the food for brain? We all want the youngsters to have a clear brain, but even for us, especially in perimenopause or andropause for men, suddenly the brain is not as sharp as it used to be. So what is the food that helps us for serotonin, the happy hormone, and tryptophan? Eggs, fish, cheese, pumpkin seeds, beans and pulses, red meat and chicken. And I know that you very often hear, but red meat is unhealthy. Of course, we are talking about grass-fed, Angus beef from the mountains. And I know that this is expensive, so maybe once a week. Maybe you are vegetarian, so pumpkin seeds are always a good source of protein, and they are antiparasitic, and they're easy to buy. They're not even so expensive. And eggs is a wonderful source of all amino acids, all proteins. And fish, preferably you want to choose the small fish like sardines, because large fish like tuna lives in a polluted ocean for 50 years, has lots of mercury. Mercury is a heavy toxic metal that loves fat. It's lipophilic, and it's going to store in the brain and cause Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and many other diseases. That's what we don't want. And if we have here vegans, beans and pulses all the time. Mexicans, they're used to that. And what would be the nutrition to fuel the body, brain, and the growth? So number one, and I've said it so many times, it's eating the rainbow. So if you look at your plate today, or maybe even the young people around you, do they have their different colors? Because every color has different benefits, and you will be able to download the sheet about the rainbow and all different colors and benefits after the session. So red, for example, supports immune system, the police of the body. Orange protects the skin because it has lycopene, actually eyes and skin, yeah? And it turns, for many of us, if you have the enzyme, it turns into vitamin A, which is also protecting our skin and inside the mucus. Green helps with the detox and, of course, the gut health as well. Blue and purple, that's a superfood. So blueberries and red cabbage, it is for the brain function, but also anti-cancer properties. What I see that my clients do very often with their children, and maybe your parents were doing it to you as well, they were rewarding you with food, and we should never reward with food. Oh, you have been so good, let's have ice cream. Or because you have good marks, I will give you chocolate. This is rewarding with food, and it shouldn't be. And no emotional overeating. So Bridget Jones overeating on a broken heart, okay, once a year maybe, but we don't want to do that. And many of my clients say, I have been working all day, and then opening the fridge is just fueling my soul. What else can you do to fuel your soul? Is it going to the nature? Is it finding a group of people that motivate you? Because remember that food is information for cells. And if you overload on sugar and carbs and processed food, your body has to store it somewhere. Your body doesn't know where it comes from, doesn't have the enzymes to break it down, and it's just causing aging and disease. So what is the optimal body fat? So for men, it's 6 to 15%, for women, 14 to 20%. So if you, for example, have 50 kilos, or if like, these are calculations for me. Okay. So my ideal weight is, I used to say 48, but now it's 49. So when I have 50 kilos, I have 18% of fat, which is healthy, which is 9 kilos of fat. So imagine if you have 9 kilos of fat, you can really survive for quite a long time. And when I have 48 kilos, I have 14% of fat, which is the minimum, and I would never go under 48. And then, of course, it depends on the muscle. So I have this like super duper scale that is telling me I have between 36 to 40 kilos of muscle mass, usually like 39. But this can also change. So don't rely on scale and don't torture yourself on that. Just know approximate. So 1 kilo of fat is 7,700 calories. When somebody tells you that you can lose 5-10 kilos per month, it is simply not possible. Because even if you are in a caloric restriction, let's say for 500 calories less than you usually eat, and you are intermittent fasting, to lose 1 kilo of body fat, 14 days. So just calculate, if you are losing a weight, make it realistic, or even for your children, tell them that it is not possible to do anything drastic, and it's better to go safe and slow and lose it and keep it and still enjoy the life. So for youngsters, which supplements do I recommend having? And actually for all of us. So vitamin C. I personally order buffered vitamin C because it's not damaging the gut lining. I ordered from Sunday Natural, and it's very good for like clear skin and collagen building, because collagen is made from amino acids, zinc, and vitamin C. So I take 500 milligrams every single day, or when I remember, but you can go up to 4,000 milligrams. But remember that vitamin C, it gives you energy. So if you take it in the afternoon or in the evening, you're not going to sleep. And second, it causes diarrhea very often. Okay, so for people who are constipated, vitamin C is a great choice. But for those ones that suffer with diarrhea, vitamin C might not be a good solution. Magnesium. I always use magnesium. I actually use 800 milligrams every evening, 1 hour before or 2 hours before I go to sleep, because it relaxes the nervous system, and it is very good for girls that have, menstrual cramps and painful periods. And it also reduces stress. So magnesium and different. Magnesium malate is for energy. Magnesium taurate is for nervous system. Magnesium citrate and oxide, they usually help with to remove constipation. So we don't absorb them, but they help to move the bowel. But then we have, for example, magnesium bisglycinate or glycinate. It is the best form that you can have. And then I personally use lysine, L-lysine, buy it in a pharmacy, or I buy it from Lambert's in the UK. And this is for the growth and tissue repair. And especially for adolescents when they are growing, it's good. And I personally use it to inhibit virus. So if I have herpes virus, it's dormant. It stays as soon as you once have a herpes, it's dormant in ganglia, and it's just waiting for you to get weak. And I use this when I know that I will be traveling or under stress or something. L-lysine. I use 1,000 milligrams, but you can go up to 2 or 3,000. But talk to your practitioner. And vitamin D. So minimum 2,000 international units per day. But if you have deficiency, if you have autoimmune disease, you can do 5,000, 10,000, but speak to your practitioner. Yeah? And omega-3, you ideally want 1,300 milligrams of omega-3, from which minimum 700 is EPA, and let's say 300, 400 is the DHA. So I use again Lambert's product called Pulse because it's in combination with coenzyme Q10, which is good for mitochondria and for energy. And then zinc. As I said, you also want zinc glycinate or zinc picolinate for easier absorption, and it's good for wound healing, reduces acne, it's good for the immune system. It has many, many benefits. Health is the biggest wealth. So let's remind ourselves what Dalai Lama said. So when asked what surprised him most about humanity, the Dalai Lama answered, man. Because he sacrifices his health to make money. And then he sacrifices money to recuperate his health. And then he's so anxious about the future that he does not enjoy the present. The result is that he does not live in the present or the future. He lives as if he's never going to die, and then dies having never really lived. So, what I encourage you and the youngsters around you to move. You can move every day with Alo Moves. You can listen to meditations, David G, with Spotify. You can read books in German and in English or listen to them on the application Blinkist. You can use the food marble to find out what is the root cause of your digestive drama. And you can use the Aura Ring to measure the menstrual cycle and sleep so that you can flow through your days with ease. So where to start? Well, the first thing would be get rid of stress. Get it under control. Take care of yourself because nobody will. Relax, meditate, exercise. Take antioxidants daily, either eating lots of colorful vegetable or taking supplements. You want to eat 10 portions of vegetable per day, minimum. Yes. Include sulfur-containing vegetables, so it's broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage. Eat protein with every meal. Avoid carbohydrates as much as you can because we don't need them. They're opioids. And hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Thank you for your attention.